Hello everyone, this is Ashley Tucker. Thank you for joining me today. Today I'm sharing a card featuring the brand new Hexagon Element die from Simon Says Stamp's Rest and Refresh release. I started out with a piece of Canson watercolor paper taped down to a board, and I first took my paintbrush and I added some clean water to the surface. I'm using my Prima watercolors to create a background for my card, and I really wanted this background to be very organic and kind of almost messy. I'm using lots of yellow colors and a little bit of orange from the Classic set and the Pastel set of Prima watercolors. Once I finished adding that first layer of paint, I picked up the board and I tilted it around, which helps to move that paint around on the surface, and I really like the texture that this can create. After letting the first layer of paint dry completely, I'm going to add another layer on top, but I'm not going to completely cover that first layer. I want some of it to show so that I can have some different depths of color. And you can see how when that first layer dried, it became a lot lighter. That's something you always have to remember when you're working with watercolor paint. It always dries lighter than it looks when it's wet. Once that second layer of paint was completely dry, the background is done. And then I took out the Hexagon Element die and I cut it out of Neenah Classic Crest Silver White cardstock. And I cut it 3 times, and I'm going to be gluing each of these 3 pieces together so that I have a nice dimensional piece. Before gluing these together, I took some painter's tape and I wrapped it around my fingers so that the sticky side is out. And then I pounced it over the top of each of these die cuts. When you have intricate die cuts like this, you often have little stringy pieces of paper that are on the edges, and this helps to clean those off. I used Gina K Designs Connect glue in order to adhere these 3 pieces together, and I just added little dots of that glue to the corners of each of the hexagons. It does take a little bit of time to do this, but I love the dimension it adds, so I think it's worth it. And I do think that there are probably more time efficient ways to do this. Like I've seen a lot of people lately using that glue sponge, and I hope to eventually try that, but for now, this is what I've got to do. Next, I took my watercolor background and I trimmed it to be 4 by 5 1/4, and then I popped it up onto an A2 size card base with some foam tape. I then adhered the hexagon piece onto the card base using that same Gina K Designs Connect glue. I decided that I wanted this hexagon piece to look a lot like a honeycomb, so I wanted it to look like there was honey inside of each of those spaces. To create that look of honey, I used my glossy accents to fill in each one of those hexagons. Now, when I first went through with the glossy accents, I just did a big blob in each of those spaces, and then I went back through and using the tip on the glossy accents, I spread out that blob to fill in the shape. Now, because this is a really thick layer of glossy accents, it does need quite a while to dry, and honestly, I don't think I gave it enough time to dry before moving on to the next step. For my sentiment, I'm going to be using this alphabet die set from Simon Says Stamp and Kathy Zilski, and I cut out the word honey out of some slate gray cardstock, which is also from Simon Says Stamp. The first 3 letters I glued on using my Gina K Designs Connect glue, and for the last 2 letters, because they are not on top of the honeycomb part, I used foam tape in order to adhere those. And like I said before, I did not give the glossy accents enough time to dry before moving on to this step, which was kind of a mistake because I did get glossy accents on my letters, and I'll show you how I fixed that later. To create the second half of my sentiment, I used the Tiny Words stamp set from Simon Says Stamp, and I stamped that using Gina K Designs Jet Black Amalgam ink onto some Neenah Classic Crest Silver White cardstock, and then I cut it down into a strip and popped it up onto the card with some foam tape. In order to try and hide that mistake with the glossy accents, I first went over the letters using my Wink of Stella glitter brush, but this didn't really help to hide the mistake because those areas were very clearly much darker than the rest of the letter. So then I decided to just go with it and go over the entire thing with glossy accents. And I actually like the way that it looks because it kind of creates that look of honey even more, because it's almost like this word is soaked in honey. I do want to mention that before I added this glossy accents, I didn't realize that the E on the honey was a little bit crooked, and I couldn't really fix it once the glossy accents was on there. I had to wait until it was completely dry, and then I adjusted it. For the finishing touches on this card, I first picked out a few sequins from the Heaven Sent sequin mix from Lucy's cards, and I glued those down around my honeycomb. I then took my Wink of Stella glitter brush and I went over the sentiment strip. At this point, I realized I wanted a few more sequins, and I even placed a couple of those sequins right into the glossy accents, and then this card was all done. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you really enjoyed this card design featuring that Hexagon Element die from Simon Says Stamp. All of the supplies that I used for today's card can be found in the description down below. If this is your first time on my channel and you enjoyed watching today, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you can see all of my future videos. I do new card videos every single week, and I'm going to be back with another one really soon. Again, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all of you, and I hope you have a good day today.